Hello, and welcome to this video on how to put the TLC into your HR communication. So far, if you've joined me with the other videos, we've covered step 1, step 2 in the HR Impact and Influence Blueprint, where we've talked about intimacy, mindset, physiology, and awareness. So if you haven't had a chance to see those, please feel free, jump back into the playlist and you'll be able to kind of view those short videos on those particular factors. We're now moving into step 3, the final step within impact. And we're really talking about kind of implementing all the stuff that we got in step 1 and 2 and redefining the way in which you're showing up. So we're starting off with the C. And yes, no surprises, the C is all about communication. And it's all about the T.L.C magnifier. How can you put some TLC into your communication to magnify your impact? Well, what does the TLC stand for? Tonality, language, and clarity. So these are the 3 points that I want to cover in this video for you. So let's get into tonality. Why is tonality important? Plain and simple. Some of you may already know this. 38% of your communication impact is tone of voice. So when you are interacting with others within your place of work, what's your tone? Because let's face it, you can say like one word and people will know just from one word where your state of mind is at. And we've talked about that. So if you kind of come into the office in the morning and someone says to you, "Good morning, how are you?" and you go, "Good morning, fine." Fine? Are you really fine? You don't sound fine. What's wrong? Nothing. It's like your tone is giving away everything, isn't it? Which is different to saying, "Yes, fine, everything's fine, fine, okay, great." The tone, has different elements to it, as you can see on the screen. So we're talking about the speed. Do you vary your speed in the way in which you talk? Because some people think, "Oh, we can't talk too fast," but you can talk faster because people tend to lean in and try to listen what you're actually saying, as opposed to speaking too slow. And, and it's like, come on, just get on with it. And we know we've got those people who actually do speak like that. Volume, of course, volume has an impact. Are you shouting? So there is a point where volume, being high volume can be kind of annoying as well. So we've got to make sure that we vary our volume, the timbre, the quality of our voice, how deep it is. Yes, or are we going for the high pitch? And we're kind of talking like this, and that can be very annoying when we start talking. So when you think about having an impact, your tone of voice is going to speak volumes, literally. Is there a rhythm to it, or are you talking about the same thing? Tonality, is really important to having impact when you are communicating. It's like, where's the rhythm? Is there any rhythm to your voice? So we've got to think about, how do we create more impact? It's just simply by your tone of voice. So there's lots more we could go on, but I want to move on for the sake of time in this video. So language, let's talk about language. What language are we using when we're communicating? So we need to understand, there are certain predicates. And what I mean about predicates, something looks right, sound right, feel right. So someone could be saying to you, "Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I don't hear it." Or it sounds right, but it doesn't feel right. And it's kind of like, what do you mean? But logically, we're representing information in our minds. Does it look right to me? Does it sound right to me? Does it feel right to me? So we've got to be thinking about, when we're communicating or we're putting something together, someone might say, "Well, it doesn't look right." What do you mean it doesn't look right? Or actually, that doesn't sound like the right thing to do. What do you mean it doesn't sound like the right thing to do? Well, I hear what you're saying, but I just don't see where you're going with this. Oh, interesting. So you hear the different language predicates. So, the other thing about language predicates, is thinking about, well, what would I need to see, hear, or feel in order to be convinced? So are you a visual convincer? Or are you auditory? Or are you a kinesthetic convincer? So if I'm going to get you to buy a jacket or to buy something, do you need to see it to be convinced that it's right for you? Or do I need to tell you about it? This is all the reasons why you should buy it. Or do you need to kind of try that jacket on in order to feel and to be convinced that it's the right jacket for you? So again, when you put together a presentation and you're communicating with other departments, functions, leaders, you've got to make sure that there is an element of visual, auditory, and kinesthetic in your communication, because you'll only get it at one level. So you could put a really nice slide deck together and it's all visual. And the reason why you put it all visual is because you're visual, and that's how you would be convinced. So you put together that presentation in the context of what would convince you, not necessarily what will convince your audience, right? So think about that. Does it have a visual element? Are you talking to it? Is it logical? Does it make sense in what I'm seeing on the screen? And does it evoke any sort of emotion, what I'm looking at and what I'm hearing you say? So again, we need to have these three variables within your language. Make sense? So hopefully that does. Take that away. Of course, there's more, but let's crack on with clarity for the sake of this video. So what do I mean by clarity? Well, I love this quote from Dan and Chip Heath. Resistance is created through a lack of clarity. I mean, anytime someone's being resistant with you, it's not that they want to be difficult and be a pain in the neck. Okay, maybe there are those people who do want to do that, but ultimately, the reason why I don't get what you're saying or resisting what you're saying is because I'm not clear on it. So we've got to be thinking about, when we're communicating, what level of clarity are we communicating, or not, for that matter. So if someone doesn't get it, it doesn't mean that they're stupid and they're just, blatantly resisting it. No, this could be, actually, it's not really clear what you just said to me. So we need to make sure we have that clarity. That's super important. Anytime you're having a discussion where someone is resisting you, to ask yourself, what's missing for this person, that in a way that's actually, it's not getting through to them. Something's missing. So what can I add to my communication that's going to give them clarity? So just be mindful of that. So again, and there are some other, when we look at the more research and we think about how many bits of information our brains are processing or trying to process, well, we know out of the 11 billion bits, of information per second, we're only kind of processing 50 bits. Or if we look at how much data we're being exposed to on a day-to-day basis through our phones, through our laptops, through pop-ups, through messages, emails, the amount of information that's coming through is like overwhelming, which really is a struggle to kind of be clear. So what we have to now do is, it's like we've got this overload of data. We talked about choice overload before, and we've got all this information. So we have to apply filters, and the filters we apply, we start to delete information, we start to distort information, and we start to generalize. Why? We have to make sense. I walk into a room, there's only a table, there's no chairs. What am I going to think? What's being deleted here out of this scene? Well, there's no chairs, what's going on? So I distort and think, well, and then I generalize and go, well, the chairs are missing because it's just a table. Well, maybe there's a stand-up meeting going on, who knows? But we tend to generalize, and these deleting, distorting, and generalizing, these filters are applied to HR. And we hear this, that HR doesn't do numbers, or HR only is good when we need to hire people or fire people. They're deleting something about, we do a lot more than that, right? And they're distorting what the function of HR, and obviously looking at what we, in terms of generalization. So guys, think about this now. If we want to have clarity in the way in which we communicate, we need to be aware that when we're communicating to people, they're deleting and distorting and generalizing information. Even as I speak to you now, you're doing the same thing. You are deleting, distorting, and generalizing what I'm saying in order to make sense, right? It's normal. So we need to be very mindful. If we're going to magnify our impact, we need to be aware of what's actually going on. And that's why I'm saying, the TLC is right. Let's be aware of our tonality. Let's be aware of our language. And let's be really clear in terms of the way in which we're communicating. So hopefully you found that useful. If you're going to join me on the next video, I want to talk to you about, without these three things, HR management will not be trusted. So this is the final factor in the word impact. So hopefully you'll join me on the next video, where we'll be talking about the T in impact. Take care for now. See you on the next video.